You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believe they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity.
That is Josh Paul, who resigned from the State Department over the arms transfers to Israel because of atrocities like that one. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. Honestly, I don't even know where to begin with the number of human rights violations and war crimes that Israel is committing right now. I've been following this story very closely. I've also done some reporting on it right here on the MeidasTouch Network as well. And I'm sorry to report to you this Easter and Passover holidays, but the atrocities are breathtakingly awful. The Israeli far-right party just passed a death penalty law that only applies to Palestinians who are being held hostage in Israeli prisons. And the majority of these Palestinian hostages are not Hamas, but innocent civilians.
Israel can now legally execute Palestinian political prisoners. According to a law passed on March 30, Israeli military courts must sentence Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks on Israelis or terrorism to death. This does not apply to Jewish Israelis, who are almost never prosecuted in military courts. There was worldwide backlash to what was slammed as a discriminatory law that empowers Israel's system of apartheid. So what does this law actually entail? It makes the death penalty the default sentence in military court for certain convictions. Judges can only change it to life imprisonment if they find special reasons. It also restricts opportunities for appeal or pardon and sets a short time frame of 90 days for execution. The law was introduced by far-right members of Israel's governing coalition led by National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who wore a news pin to the vote. But it passed in the 120-seat Knesset with 62 votes, which means it got support beyond the governing coalition, including from opposition parties. This isn't Israel's first discriminatory law that targets Palestinians. Only Palestinians from the West Bank are tried in military courts under Israeli Military Order 1651. These are opaque trials where they may not even be allowed to see the charges. Israeli settlers from illegal settlements, on the other hand, get civilian trials. There are more than 9,000 Palestinian political prisoners in Israeli prisons. 350 of them are children. Some 3,000 are administrative detainees held without charge or trial, according to prisoner support organization Al-Damir. The thousands of cases of mass rape, torture, and killing that happen in those prisons are widely documented. In 2024, leaked videos showed 5 Israeli soldiers brutally beating and sexually assaulting a Palestinian man at Sde Teiman detention center. In a rare occurrence, the 5 Israeli soldiers were indicted in military court, but charges were dropped in March 2026, citing lack of evidence, and that the victim had been returned to Gaza and couldn't testify. Then there was Ahmed Manasra, detained at age 13 and kept mostly in solitary confinement. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia by the time he was released 10 years later. And we have Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, who was taken from Gaza in late 2024, held without charge or trial, and tortured in custody, according to his lawyer. Now, the same system that does this to thousands of Palestinians every year has ordered its military court to sentence them to death.
Dr. Abu Safiya is being held hostage and tortured for the crimes of what? Rescuing and caring for the thousands of Palestinian victims that Israel has bombed and shot? A physician doing what he was trained to do to help and heal? ahead, Israel, and tell me about what a good democratic nation you truly are. UN experts are demanding Abu Safia's release, accusing Israel of violating the UN's Mandela rules, which were unanimously adopted in 2015 to ensure that prisoners receive fair and humane treatment. And did you catch that part about the Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir wearing a noose pin? Here he is celebrating the death by hanging law for Palestinians only.
מוות המחבלים עבר היום, חוק מוות המחבלים, היסטוריה. בעזרת השם בקרוב, אחד להוציא להורג, כל אלה שטבחו ורצחו ושרפו, לחיים, לחיי עם ישראל.
This is a deeply disturbing discriminatory law that, in essence, entrenches the apartheid that we've seen in the occupied territories, rather than moving toward some kind of fair justice system there.
Yeah, just breaking out the champagne, just celebrating the torture and execution of innocent Palestinians. I mean, he is a fecking Nazi. Osama Abu Nassar, who is a Palestinian father, was taking his toddler to get supplies when he was caught suddenly in Israeli gunfire. And according to witnesses, Israeli forces then took the baby, interrogated Nassar, then tortured the child in front of his father by burning him with cigarettes and inserting a metal nail into the baby's legs. The child, named Karim, was handed back only when the International Red Cross got involved. He was handed back over to his family. Meanwhile, his father still being held hostage. Nice people, aren't they, the Israelis? And while it seems like these atrocities are a new thing, trust me, they are not. The nation of Israel has been violating international human rights laws for decades. Israel is an ethno-state. Its goal is to expand the empire of white Jewish Zionists. That is what Zionism is. It is about expanding the empire and creating an ethno-state. Exactly like the theocracy that white Christian nationalists are trying to create here in America under Trump. And here's Netanyahu basically admitting it himself. This is a tweet from the Voice of Rabbis. It's a group of rabbis who are vehemently opposed to Zionism, and they're quoting Netanyahu, who says, "We are working on transforming Israel into a supernation in the Middle East and globally." And Voice of Rabbis says that we say Benjamin Netanyahu does not represent all Jews. Israel does not represent Judaism. Judaism teaches humility, justice, and restraint, not dominance, and good for them. As well as attacking Iran and the ongoing genocide in Gaza, Israel has now just invaded Lebanon. Air and land attacks are causing a humanitarian disaster, displacing 1 million people and killing 900 people, including 100 children and counting by the time you see this video.
This morning, people here in central Beirut woke up to one of the largest explosions of the war so far. It felled an apartment block Israel says had been used by Hezbollah.
The Israelis are also flooding the Gazan waters with sewage to poison the Palestinians, not to mention also our planet. And while it is technically illegal under Israeli law for Israeli citizens to settle on Palestinian land in the West Bank, here's what is actually happening.
We can now add sexual assault to the types of violence Palestinians say they face from Israeli settlers here in the occupied West Bank. This is the tent where a Palestinian man named Qusay says Israeli settlers stormed in, seized him before using these zip ties to bind him by his hands and legs. He then says they cut off his underwear before tying his genitals with one of these zip ties and then parading him around his village in front of his family.
جروني على الخيمة جوا. أول بلشوا في ضرب بوكسات وربطوا جري، أخذوا الحزام يعني الشاط، قطعوا هذا يتقطع، ها شايف كيف قطع، وقطعوا البوكس اللي لابسه وربطوا عضو ذكرهم كتفين ويضربوا فيه وجروني من هناك وحطوا علي مي والتراب.
What was going through your mind when that was happening?
شو قتلونا قتل موت.
Kusai says the settlers also stole hundreds of his sheep that used to be in this pen right here. Israeli authorities are investigating this incident, but we've seen that these investigations too often don't lead to any arrests, and settler impunity continues.
The Palestinians simply have no justice under Israeli law. None. Sounds familiar, yeah? Like black and brown people in America, especially under the Trump regime, and in Lebanon. As Hend Omri posts, Jewish troops will be looking for Muslims hidden in the attics of Christians. Let that sink in. The Israelis are literally repeating the history that they are always talking about happened to them during the Holocaust. The abused have become the abusers. Truly sickening. According to the New York Times, Israeli military officials are now warning Christian and Druze communities in Lebanon not to hide any Shiite Muslims as they advance in southern Lebanon. And the population in southern Lebanon, by the way, is mostly Shiite Muslims. It is ethnic cleansing. Make no mistake about it. And although it is largely symbolic, 18 countries have now joined South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. And Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez recently said this about his support for Palestine.
I would like to inform you that at the meeting of the Council of Ministers that will be held today, the government of Spain will approve the official recognition of Palestine as a state. With this decision, Spain joins the more than 140 countries that already recognize Palestine. This is a historic decision that has a single goal: to contribute to achieving peace between Israelis and Palestinians.
Spain has also blocked the United States from using its air bases to launch attacks against Iran. Good for them. And here at home, AOC has just announced that she will no longer support any kind of taxpayer-funded arms for Israel, to include defense weapons. Why? Because Israel can afford to pay for it themselves. They can afford to pay for their Iron Dome. Netanyahu's allies in the Knesset just approved a $45 billion budget, and AOC cites Israel's willful violations of international laws and human rights violations as more impetus for her to say absolutely no more. And so, guys, I will end on this note. Israel is not the good guy. We are not the good guys for allying with this rogue and criminal state. We are losing allies. Israel is losing allies. Do you see what's happening? Look at some of my earlier reports here on MeidasTouch, and you'll see how we have often been the only other nation that's voting with Israel against human rights. And because we are doing horrible things to other humans, not to mention the environment, we, along with Israel, are currently committing war crimes against people in Iran and also Lebanon. And as I have just outlined for you, the atrocities that Israel is committing in Gaza using American taxpayer dollars. And we should be outraged about this. And, you know, Democrats should be looking at an absolute wipeout this November in the midterms, yet their approval ratings are in the sewer. And one of the main reasons is their refusal to break ties with the corrupt state of Israel. And this was allegedly what was brought out in the autopsy report after the 2024 loss of the Kamala campaign. But the DNC and Ken Martin are sitting on it. And it's like, you can't hide the truth, but for so long. People are not okay with this. People do not want to be in bed with a criminal and rogue regime anymore. And they certainly don't want their taxpayer dollars supporting it. So I will leave you with this. If there is a progressive candidate primarying your entrenched corporate Democrat wherever you leave, please get behind them now. Primaries are happening now. It is urgent that you get behind them, help them door knock, help them gain signatures, because primaries are happening now. We are not going to change anything with these entrenched, paid off Zionists in Congress. And I'm in a district that's looking at that right now. Where I am right now, I have a MAGA representative, but the Democrat who's running in my district right now is a full-blown Israeli supporting Zionist. And I am not okay with that. That is only like a step below MAGA for me. So we have to get behind these progressives who are AIPAC free, who support universal health care, who support renewable energy, because in addition to all of this mess and human rights violations, look what we're doing to the earth by blowing up these oil refineries, et cetera. It's just a disaster, and we can avoid it by putting the right people in Congress to represent us. But we have to do it. We can't just sit back and be like, oh, I'm going to see what happens. It doesn't work that way. So that's all I got for you guys. Please follow me on my social media platforms below, and you can find more information. I've been platforming a lot of these progressive candidates. And remember, we have to remain involved in order for change to affect. And, right now during this, I'm not sure when you'll see this video, but during this time, whatever faith you practice, or if you do not practice a faith at all, I'm going to ask that you join me in prayer or just sending out good vibes for true peace in the Middle East.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.